He didn't say a word. He didn't even look at me. That hurt more than if he had shouted. The smell of rosemary and baked butter still lingered in the kitchen air. I had just taken the tart out of the oven, Claire's favorite, lemon with a crumbly shortbread base. It was a small thing, but I had done it for years. A quiet gesture. A peace offering. Maybe a way to still feel needed. The afternoon sun painted the dining table gold. I remember thinking how peaceful everything looked. The folded laundry stacked on the chair, my grandson's watercolor drawings still taped to the fridge. I'd just finished cleaning the hallway baseboards, the kind of work no one noticed unless it was left undone. That's how I existed in this house, only visible through absence. I had just finished wiping my hands on the dish towel when I heard the front door. Claire's heels clicked sharply on the wood floor. I knew that sound. Purposeful. Too purposeful for a random visit home from work. She was early, and I could feel it before she even spoke, a kind of tension, like the air thickened around her steps. She walked in, saw the tart, and gave a quick, thin smile. "You didn't need to do that," she said, but not kindly. Not with gratitude. It was the sort of sentence that sounds polite if you don't listen too hard. I listened too hard. "I know," I replied softly, placing the tart on the cooling rack. "I just thought." "That's the problem, Helena," she interrupted, taking off her coat and draping it over the back of the chair I had just dusted. "You always think you need to do things. No one asked you to bake. No one asked you to fold the laundry." I turned to face her, gently smoothing the edge of my sweater. "I just thought it might help. You've both been so busy lately." Claire gave a short, dry laugh. "Help? You think this is helping?" There was a moment of silence. Long enough for me to hear the refrigerator humming. Long enough to realize this conversation wasn't about tarts or folded socks. Claire exhaled, pulled her phone from her bag, and set it on the table. "Look, I'll just say it. This arrangement, it's not working." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. I had known for months, maybe even years. But you lie to yourself in the quiet ways. You tell yourself it's not that bad. You call it just a rough patch when you're the only one patching anything. Claire crossed her arms, eyes cool. "This isn't your home. It's our home. And Daniel and I have been talking, and we feel it's time for you to find somewhere else." I blinked, my tongue pressed against the roof of my mouth to keep it from trembling. "Find somewhere else," I repeated. Not a question. Just the sound of my heart breaking in my own voice. "You're not being thrown out," she said quickly, like that somehow softened the blow. "We just think it's time you had your own space. You deserve that. Privacy. Independence." She said the word independence like a gift, like she was wrapping eviction in silver paper and tying it with a ribbon of fake kindness. I didn't realize I was intruding. Claire sighed, exasperated. "You're not. Not always. But it's hard to have a household with 3 adults, you know? The energy gets complicated. And honestly, Daniel doesn't know how to say this, but he agrees." That was when I realized Daniel was in the room. I turned. He was sitting at the edge of the couch, eyes glued to his phone. He didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't even glance in my direction. Just kept scrolling. That silence cut deeper than any cruelty ever could. I felt heat rise in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Just disbelief. I stared at the boy I raised, the one I sat beside at the hospital when he broke his arm, the one I read to every night, who cried into my blouse after nightmares. I had kept the house together after his father died. I had moved in when he asked me to. "Mom, we'll need help with the baby. Claire's going back to work. We'd love to have you." That's what he said. That's what I believed. But now, in this living room I'd paid for more than once over, I was a guest who'd overstayed. Claire tilted her head. "It's not personal." I laughed softly, bitterly. "It's not." "No," she said flatly. "It's just time. You've been here, what, 5 years? You've helped a lot. But we want to create a space that's ours. Just ours." The words came out so cleanly. She'd practiced them. I wanted to speak. To say this is my home too. To remind them that I was the one who paid the extra $12,000 when the down payment fell short. That the reason the utilities never got cut off during Daniel's layoffs was because I quietly covered them. That the furniture she picked out from glossy catalogs was half bought with the savings I'd held onto since Henry died. But I didn't say any of that, because I knew it wouldn't matter. I see, I said. Claire softened her tone just a notch. We're giving you until the end of the month. That should give you time to transition. She said it like I was moving jobs, not being cast out. I'll start packing tomorrow, I murmured. Claire nodded, satisfied, and walked upstairs without another word. I looked at Daniel again. My son, my only child. He kept his eyes on his screen. I opened my mouth, just barely. Daniel? He paused. His thumb hovered over the phone. Then he stood, mumbled something about work emails, and walked away. He couldn't even give me a sentence. I stood alone in the kitchen, the scent of lemon and sugar turning bitter in the air. Every memory I had in this house felt suddenly foreign. The birthday banners I hung for their son. The nights I stayed up with a teething baby so they could sleep. The silent way I cleaned, cooked, retreated, just so they could have their space. All of it collapsed into this one moment. You don't belong here. The tart sat forgotten on the counter. I covered it with foil, hands trembling. I didn't cry. Not yet. I went upstairs to the guest room. No, not even that. It was the spare room, sometimes the office, depending on who was talking. My room never had a name. My name was never spoken with warmth here, only with obligation. I began folding clothes into a suitcase I hadn't used since Henry's funeral. As I packed, I heard laughter from downstairs. The television was on. A show they liked. Claire said something. Daniel chuckled. They were already back to normal. As if I had never been there at all. That was the moment the resentment fully settled in, not loud or fiery, but cold. Quiet. Like frost forming on glass. Because I realized they hadn't made a mistake. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Polite, polished, clean, but deliberate. I was never supposed to stay. I was a placeholder. A useful shadow. And once I was no longer convenient, they flicked me off like dust from the mantelpiece I'd polished every week. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the hum of the house, the pipes I had paid to repair, the heater I had installed with the money Henry left. I looked up at the ceiling, wondering if they even remembered how often I had saved them. Or if, to them, I was just part of the wallpaper. At dawn, I woke, not with sorrow, but with decision. No begging. No explaining. I made coffee quietly. Left the tart in the fridge. I checked my bank accounts. The automatic payments I had set up. Mortgage contributions, property tax offsets, insurance copays. All of it. I canceled each one. Mortgage assistance. Terminated. Property tax cover. Done. Emergency maintenance fund. Locked. By the time they noticed, they'd feel it. But I wouldn't be there to see it. That was the point. Real consequences don't need an audience. I packed the last of my books. My late husband's letters. A few framed photos they never asked about. And then, with the morning sun creeping over the lawn I once weeded by hand, I left. Not a word. Not a note. Just the quiet satisfaction of finally walking away from a house I paid for, but never truly lived in. The silence of the motel room was different from the one in the house. This one didn't judge me. It didn't expect anything. It didn't ask me to stay invisible in exchange for staying. There were no sounds of a television murmuring downstairs, no cabinets slamming as Claire rearranged a kitchen I once filled with warmth. Just the soft hum of the small heater near the window and the occasional whisper of tires on wet asphalt outside. It was raining. Not hard, just enough to paint the windows in streaks of silver. The kind of rain that makes you feel like the world is washing itself clean. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the edge of my cardigan, the scent of the house still faint in the fibers. Lemon tart, fabric softener, and something else, something sour I hadn't noticed until I left. A kind of bitterness that had soaked into the walls, into me. I hadn't cried. Not yet. Not when she said I didn't belong. Not when my own son couldn't look me in the eye. Not when I canceled the payments that kept their home warm. But now, in the stillness of a strange room that didn't know my name, the tears finally arrived. Not in sobs. Just slow, tired drops like the rain. I looked around the room. Beige walls. A wooden dresser. A mirror slightly tilted to the left. And me, a woman of 65 who had spent most of her life giving. Quietly. Steadily. Without asking much in return. And that was my mistake, wasn't it? I never asked for anything. I just gave. At first, I thought the resentment was new. A reaction to Claire's words or Daniel's silence. But it wasn't new at all. It was old, ancient, almost. A low hum that had been vibrating inside me for years. Maybe decades. I remembered the first time I truly felt it. Long before the house. Before Claire. Before the tart. Daniel must have been 13. He had forgotten his lunch. I drove across town on my lunch break to drop it off at the school office, the sandwich still warm, tucked into a paper bag with a note. Have a good day, sweetheart. Love, Mom. He came home that day and didn't mention it. When I asked if he got the lunch, he shrugged. Yeah, I was hoping for money instead. The cafeteria had pizza today. That was all. It wasn't cruelty, just carelessness. The kind of casual disregard that slips under your skin before you know it. Claire's voice, though, was different. Hers carried an edge, a tone that cut. Every compliment was laced with correction. Every thank you was followed by an instruction. She never shouted. She never needed to. Her favorite weapon was tone. I remember once, maybe 2 years ago, she came home and found the dishwasher running. Oh, Helena, she said, laughing slightly, I wish you'd told me you were going to run it. I would have loaded it properly. Properly. As if years of running a household had taught me nothing. As if my way of loading a dishwasher needed to be fixed, improved, corrected by her. I smiled and nodded then. Told her I'd remember next time. There was never a next time. I simply stopped running it. And Daniel? He always said the same thing. She doesn't mean anything by it. Or you know how Claire is. As if her dismissiveness was a season we had to endure. As if the woman I cooked for, cleaned for, and made tea for daily was somehow above basic kindness. Resentment doesn't arrive like thunder. It accumulates like dust. Quietly, invisibly, until one day you wake up and find it coating everything. The doorknobs. The light switches. The very air. I saw it in the way Claire handed me lists. Not requests. Lists. Could you pick up almond milk? And make sure the laundry's done before noon. Ethan has a play date and needs his blue sweater. Oh, and the vet called about the dog's medicine. No please. No warmth. Just instructions like I was the hired help who forgot her title. But I wasn't hired. I wasn't even acknowledged. I was just there, like a coat rack. Like the umbrella stand by the door. Necessary, but never praised. Expected, but never thanked. She once asked me if I'd mind just staying in the guest room when her friends came over for a dinner party. You know how modern women can be, she'd said, smiling like it was a joke. They'll think it's odd we still have a parent living with us. Makes us seem old-fashioned. Odd. That's what I had become. An oddity. A wrinkle in the narrative of their perfectly curated life. I remember sitting on the edge of that guest bed, the door closed, while laughter drifted up from the dining room. My food, prepared by my own hands, was on their plates. But my presence was hidden, because I didn't match the decor. The more I remembered, the colder I felt. And not just because of the motel's thin blankets. I remembered the birthday they forgot. Not entirely, they gave me a gift card, left on the counter like a grocery list. No note. No cake. Just a card that read happy birthday in print someone else had chosen. Daniel didn't even sign it. I remembered Claire's sigh when I asked once if I could have friends over for tea. It's just, the house gets so loud. And Ethan's routine is really important right now. Maybe another time. There was never another time. I remembered the time Ethan, my grandson, drew a picture of the family. A house, his parents, the dog, even his stuffed bear. Know me. When I asked, gently, if I was there too, he looked confused. You live in the upstairs room, he said. You're not really part of the house. Claire laughed when I told her. He's just a child, she said. But she didn't correct him. She didn't tell him I belonged. Because I didn't. Not in their eyes. In their eyes, I was background. The scaffolding. The steady hand in the shadows. And maybe, in my need to be useful, I allowed that. I chose to stay silent when I should have spoken. I chose to give instead of draw lines. I told myself I was being kind, patient, loving. But sometimes love becomes a disguise for fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being truly seen and not wanted. I sat in the motel room as the rain turned to mist. And I let myself feel the full weight of it, the years of being erased, inch by inch. The way Daniel turned from the boy who hugged me at the school gate into a man who wouldn't meet my eyes. The way Claire built a home around me, not with me. I wasn't family, I was function. And that function had expired. Yet in all that cold, something small and warm flickered inside me, because I had left. I had said nothing, but I had acted. I had finally chosen myself, not out of anger, but out of necessity. And for the first time in years, I didn't have to shrink. I could breathe in a room that didn't require my silence to feel peaceful. I could sleep without worrying about whether someone would notice if I was gone. I could, maybe one day soon, live somewhere where my name wasn't whispered as an inconvenience, but spoken with warmth. The motel wasn't much. The lighting was yellow and the bed creaked when I shifted, but it was mine for tonight. And that was a beginning. I opened my suitcase and pulled out a small envelope. Inside were old photos. Me and Henry. Young, sunburnt, smiling in the garden behind our first home. Daniel as a toddler, clinging to my neck, face sticky with ice cream. A letter from Henry, written just before he passed, thanking me for holding everything together even when everything felt like it was falling apart. I had held everything, for everyone, until I had nothing left to hold for myself. But not anymore. I stared out the window, the last drops of rain slipping down the glass like the tears I had already cried. Tomorrow, I would begin again. And I wouldn't ask anyone's permission to belong. It snowed the morning I decided not to go back. Not back to visit. Not for Sunday dinner. Not even for Ethan's birthday, which Claire had once told me I was expected to help organize again this year. The snow had started early, soft, almost shy. By midday, it blanketed the street like quiet forgiveness. I watched it from the window of the small rental cottage I'd taken, just a town over. Temporary, modest, with creaky floors and a stove that smelled faintly of cinnamon whenever it warmed up. But it was mine, and that was the difference. I sat in the armchair by the window, a chipped mug of tea cupped between my hands. Outside, the snow fell like feathers, erasing the landscape. And I felt something shift inside me too, something settling. Something being washed clean. The text came just after 10 in the morning. Claire, Ethan's party is at 2 today. Hope you can make it. He's been asking about you. Don't forget the cupcakes. No, please. No, are you okay? No mention of the fact that they'd told me to leave only 3 weeks earlier. No apology. Just a command, dressed up in assumption. And worse, there it was again. Responsibility disguised as affection. He's been asking about you. The suggestion that my absence would somehow be the problem, while they pretended nothing had happened. I didn't reply. I looked out at the snow instead, falling heavier now, gently hiding everything that used to feel sharp. I made no cupcakes. I lit a candle and watched the flame dance in the quiet. The stillness in the house felt like truth. Honest and wide. There was no noise from a television, no rushed footsteps, no lists taped to the fridge with my name underlined twice. Just me and the decision not to be used anymore. Not long after, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I let it ring once. Twice. I considered answering. Maybe he would finally say something kind. Something real. But then I remembered how he wouldn't meet my eyes when his wife told me to leave. How he didn't reach out when I packed my bags in silence. How he walked upstairs, untouched, unbothered, like my grief had been inconvenient to witness. I let it ring again and again. Then I turned the phone over on the table, screen down, like closing the door. There would be no holiday visit this year. And for the first time, the thought of not going didn't feel like a punishment, it felt like peace. I had always gone. Every year. With gifts wrapped weeks in advance, with casseroles in insulated bags, with Claire's favorite candles or the cashmere gloves she once mentioned offhandedly. I'd show up early to help decorate, to watch Ethan while Claire got ready. I'd stand in the kitchen slicing vegetables while she talked about new lighting fixtures or Ethan's school performance or Daniel's work stress. And I would smile. I would nod. I would offer to stay late and do the dishes. Once, I remember Claire asked if I could wear something less formal. "You always look a bit traditional," she said, trying to soften it with a smile. "It kind of throws off the family photos." She was talking about the navy dress I wore every year. The one Henry loved. The one I wore the last Christmas we shared before he passed. It wasn't fancy. Just neat. Presentable. Mine. I remember folding it back into the closet that night, pressing it between tissue paper like something sacred being buried. This year, I unpacked it again. Not to wear, but to hold. To remind myself that there was once a version of me who stood proud in her own presence. Who baked not because she had to, but because it brought joy. Who loved her family without having to erase herself to keep their love. Claire never said thank you. Not once. Not for the Christmas dinners or the late-night babysitting or the bills I quietly covered without a word. Not for the backyard I weeded while she had her friends over. Not for the hospital trip I took Ethan to when she was too exhausted to drive. Instead, she said things like, "We couldn't do this without you," while already planning the day they would. Daniel used to say, "You're amazing, Mom," but only when he needed something. Only when there was a gap to fill and I was expected to fill it. Now there were no gaps. Just snow. And silence. I spent that afternoon reading a book I had bought years ago and never opened. I made myself roasted potatoes with rosemary, just the way I liked them, without the garlic Claire insisted on. I lit a fire in the small hearth and watched the flames curl around the wood like ribbon. I imagined the party unfolding in their house. I could see the guests arriving. Claire greeting them with wine glasses in hand. Daniel in the kitchen, fumbling with the oven timer. Ethan unwrapping presents in a flurry of paper and laughter. And someone would ask, "Where's your mother?" And Daniel would hesitate or maybe lie. Say I wasn't feeling well. Or had other plans. Something clean. Something that didn't make anyone uncomfortable. That was the part that always stung the most. Not just being left out, but being edited out. Rewritten. Like the time they posted holiday photos and cropped me from the group picture. Not out of malice. Just convenience. A better look. This year, there would be no photo to crop. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. A photo. Ethan smiling beside a stack of gifts. Claire standing beside him, hand on his shoulder. Daniel barely in the frame. No caption. No invitation. Just the image. A reminder. Or a test. But I didn't reply. I didn't send love or greetings or apologies. I looked at the photo. And I let it be what it was, a snapshot of a moment I wasn't in. A moment I wasn't needed for. I scrolled past it and turned the phone off. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Thick now. Soft as silence. And in that silence, I began to feel something unexpected. Relief. Not anger. Not grief. Not anymore. Just the slow unraveling of a role I no longer had to play. I didn't miss Claire's clipped tone or her corrections masked as suggestions. I didn't miss Daniel's quiet complicity. I didn't miss pretending I didn't mind when I did. I thought about the payments I had canceled. The mortgage I had once quietly contributed to when Daniel lost his job. The dental bills I'd paid when Ethan needed braces. The furniture delivery I covered with what was left of Henry's pension. They never asked, but they always expected. And I had delivered. Silently. Gratefully. As if that was the price of being allowed near them. But now I would give only to myself. That night, I opened the notebook I'd packed, the one I used to jot dreams into before Henry passed. At the back was a list, written in faded ink. Visit Florence. Take a watercolor class. Learn to bake bread from scratch. Go on a train alone, just once. See the ocean in winter. Wake up somewhere with no alarm, no plans. I smiled. Then I added one more line. Start tomorrow. The snow kept falling, and somewhere, a part of me thawed. The first sign was the voicemail. I hadn't checked them in days. Not since I stopped replying to texts. Not since the snow made it impossible to imagine going back. But that morning, as the fire in my little rental crackled gently and the smell of fresh bread warmed the air, bread I had baked for myself. Just because I wanted to, I opened the voicemail app. Out of habit, maybe? Or curiosity. It was Claire's voice, sharp and polished, but something underneath had cracked. Hi, Helena. It's Claire. We didn't know if you got the message, but the mortgage company called today. There seems to be an issue with the automatic payments. They said they haven't received anything this month. She paused. I could hear her swallow. We thought you were still covering that. You always have. I mean, Daniel thought you had it set up still. If this is some sort of glitch, could you please look into it? It's just been a really hectic month, and anyway, please call me back. The message ended. Not with "we miss you." Not with "are you okay?" Just a request, no, an assumption, that I would fix something. Again. That I was somewhere in the background, ready to plug the leak they hadn't even bothered to notice until the water touched their ankles. I didn't return the call. That afternoon, another voicemail. Daniel this time. His voice quieter, uncertain. Mom. Hey. We're trying to get things sorted, but the heating bill, apparently that was under your name? Or at least, you'd been paying it. Claire's a little stressed. Could you give me a call? Maybe we can talk about it. Okay. I sat there, phone still in hand, and waited for the rage to come. But it didn't. Not anymore. Instead, something colder settled in, not bitterness exactly. Clarity. The kind that slices so clean you don't even feel it at first. They hadn't noticed. Not once. Not in all the years I had kept their lives stitched together with the threads of my own. And now, without me, the seams were fraying. I thought of the years I had paid that heating bill. The time I'd pretended not to notice when Claire left it unopened on the counter. The way she once said, "It's so hard to keep up with paperwork when you're juggling everything," like my time had been weightless, disposable, hers to use. They never thanked me for handling the taxes either. Or for renewing the home insurance when Claire forgot. Or for calling the plumber on a Sunday morning when the basement flooded and Daniel had said, "Can you deal with it?" I'm not good with this kind of thing. I had been the scaffolding. And now, without me, the house trembled. The next message arrived 2 days later. A group voicemail, of all things. Claire again, clipped and brittle. "We're not sure what you're trying to do here, Helena, but Ethan is starting to ask questions. He misses you. If you're punishing us, it's really not fair to him." Punishing. That was the word she chose. Not protecting myself. Not reclaiming my life. No, in Claire's world, any boundary was cruelty. Any silence was a strategy. She thought I was playing a game. But I wasn't. I had simply stopped showing up to lose. I stared at my phone for a long while after that one. Her words echoed, harsh and hollow. He misses you. As if she hadn't made it clear I wasn't part of the family anymore. as if she hadn't said, with full confidence, that their house wasn't my home. And now that the structure was wobbling financially, emotionally, I was expected to rush in and reinforce it again. Not for her. Not even for Daniel. For Ethan. A child who had once drawn his entire family in crayon and left me out. I didn't blame him. He was only repeating what he saw, what he was taught. That grandma was helpful, but not central. Necessary, but not cherished. Present, but not pictured. Later that week, I received a letter. A real one in an envelope. It was written in Daniel's handwriting, which hadn't changed much since high school. It was rushed, uneven, and smudged in places. Mom. I don't know how to say this the right way. I guess I should have spoken up sooner. Maybe I didn't realize how much you were doing until things started falling apart. Claire's been overwhelmed, and I've been trying to keep things calm for Ethan, but honestly, it's been rough. I know we didn't ask you to leave, exactly. But maybe we should have handled it differently. Claire thought it would be better for everyone for space and for boundaries. But now I think maybe we didn't think it through. Can we talk? Can you come by? We miss you. Love, Daniel. There were so many things I could have focused on. The vague wording. The refusal to take responsibility. The way he still framed it as Claire's decision, as if he had just been a spectator in his own home. But what I fixated on, what kept ringing in my head, was that one phrase, we miss you. Who was we? Claire, who once said she couldn't relax in her own house because I was always there. Daniel, who didn't lift his eyes when she told me to go. Or did we just mean Ethan, the easiest name to invoke when guilt needed a gentle face? I folded the letter and placed it on the table. I didn't throw it away. But I didn't answer either. I would not come by. Because what they missed wasn't me. It was the services I provided. The ease. The quiet presence that fixed problems and asked for nothing. And now that the cost of losing that presence had become real, financial notices, unpaid bills, uncomfortable questions from neighbors, suddenly, they missed me. I made soup that night in my own little kitchen. Lentils and thyme, simmered slowly. I poured a bowl and sat by the window as the last of the snow melted into the earth. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt still. In the days that followed, more messages came. Claire's tone turned sharp again. I don't know what you're telling people, but my sister asked if we're going through a rough patch, if you're spreading gossip or playing the victim. I stopped listening. Then Daniel again, voice low. Claire's thinking about renting out the upstairs room. We need the extra income now. Things are tight. The upstairs room. My room. The room I'd painted. The room I once hung new curtains in because Claire said it was too dark for guests. The room I once stood in, quietly packing my things after she told me I didn't belong. They were going to rent it out. To strangers. And for a moment, just a moment, the old pain flickered. But it didn't take hold. Because I wasn't there anymore. That house was not my home. It was a structure I once upheld, with my hands, my heart, and my savings. And now, without those supports, it would become whatever they made it, and they would have to live in it. Alone. I didn't call. I didn't write. I didn't return. Instead, I booked something for myself. A train ticket. A watercolor class. A small seaside hotel where I could wake up with the sound of waves and no one asking where the almond milk was or whether I'd vacuumed the stairs. The messages slowed, then stopped. The silence returned, but this time it was mine. And in that silence, I heard something I hadn't in years. My own breath. My own heartbeat. My own voice no longer echoing in a house that only heard me when I opened my wallet. That night, I lit a candle. I looked out into the dark. And I whispered to no one in particular. They didn't push me out. I walked. It was a handwritten envelope. No return address, just my name in slightly crooked cursive. The postmark was local. I stood in the doorway of my rental cottage, the wind pressing gently against my coat as I turned it over in my hands. It wasn't Daniel's handwriting. Not Claire's either. Something about the way the H curled on my name made me pause. Inside was a card. A drawing of the sea's soft blue brushstrokes, clearly done by a child's hand. And below it, written in blocky, careful letters. I hope you see the ocean soon. I miss you. Love, Ethan. For a long time, I didn't move. There was no note from Claire, no message from Daniel. Just that one card, sealed with effort. Not because they asked him to, I could feel that in the honesty of it, but because he wanted to. And for the first time in weeks, something shifted inside me that wasn't resentment. I sat by the window, holding the card with both hands. It was a small thing, but real. And maybe, just maybe, something had gotten through. Not to them, not to the adults who mistook my presence for convenience, but to the boy who had once left me out of a crayon drawing because he didn't understand where I fit. Now he was old enough to notice I was missing. And that, in its own quiet way, was enough. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to call or write back. But I did take a pen and write a card of my own. I saw the ocean. It was blue and wide and loud and soft all at once, just like I hoped it would be. Thank you for remembering me, Ethan. That means more than you know. Love, Grandma. I didn't sign it with a phone number. I didn't include a return address. Just a name in ink I hadn't used in years. I posted it that afternoon, then walked the cliffs near the coast, letting the wind push gently against my back. The sea roared below, and I imagined Ethan's painting, soft waves, imagined from memory, drawn by a child who was finally learning that love doesn't always mean presence, and absence doesn't always mean punishment. I didn't know if Claire would intercept the letter. I didn't care. I had sent it, and that was the point. When I returned to the cottage that evening, the lights were golden in the windows. My dinner waited in the oven. A simple roast, with rosemary and potatoes, just the way I liked it. I lit a candle on the table, one I bought from a small shop near the beach. Scented like cedar and something else, something I couldn't name, but made the whole room feel like a new beginning. And then, as I sat down, the doorbell rang. A soft knock first, then the sound of hesitation. I stood, heart steady, and opened it. Claire stood on the porch. Not dressed for the sea air, high boots, a sleek coat, scarf wrapped a bit too perfectly around her neck. Her cheeks were flushed, but not from the cold. From effort. From discomfort. From something that, perhaps for the first time in years, she didn't know how to control. Behind her, Daniel stood. His hands were in his pockets. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not younger, smaller. We just wanted to, Claire began. I waited. She cleared her throat. We've been thinking about how things happened, and about what we said, about what we didn't say. Daniel shifted his weight. I don't know why I didn't stop it, he said quietly. I should have. I said nothing. The silence between us stretched, wide and clean. We know you're upset, Claire added. And we understand why. Understand. That word again. As if acknowledgement could sweep away the foundation of things. Claire looked behind her, then back at me. We miss you. Ethan misses you. The house doesn't feel the same. Still, I waited. You were always doing things for us. And I guess we forgot how much. There it was. The passive confession. We forgot. Not we ignored, not we used you, not we dismissed you. Just forgot. As if I were a light switch they'd neglected to flip off. As if forgetting a person was an accident. Daniel stepped forward. If you want to come back, if you want to come home. I shook my head gently. Not harshly. Not in anger. Just the softest refusal. This is home, I said. Claire blinked. But you're alone. I smiled. Yes. And for the first time, it feels like enough. There was a long pause. I didn't mean for it to go this way, Daniel whispered. You always just fix things. I guess I thought you always would. That hurt more than I expected. Because he wasn't lying. That had been the whole problem, hadn't it? They had counted on me never leaving. On me folding. On my silence being the currency of my loyalty. And now that I had withdrawn that currency, their system was failing. I stepped aside just slightly and gestured to the inside of the cottage. "You're welcome to sit for a bit. There's tea on the stove. But I won't be returning, and I won't be rescuing anything." Claire looked startled. Daniel looked down at the floor. "I'm not angry," I added, surprising even myself. "But I won't pretend it didn't happen. And I won't go back to who I was, not for either of you." Claire's mouth parted, but no words came. I moved to close the door, slowly, gently. "I wish you well." "I do. But I'm not a fixture in someone else's home. I'm a person." And with that, I closed the door. No slamming. No speeches. Just the quiet click of a decision being honored. I stood in the middle of the room, heart steady. I could hear the retreating crunch of footsteps on gravel. A car door. Then another. The ignition. And then silence again. But it wasn't empty. It was whole. I sat at the table and poured a second cup of tea. One for me. One for no one. Or maybe for someone yet to arrive, not to take, not to drain, not to ask for more than I could give, but simply to sit beside me. To be present. As I sipped, the candle flickered in its pool of light. My hand was warm against the mug, and my chest, which had carried so much for so long, finally felt light. No one was calling. No one was waiting. No one was knocking. And yet, for the first time in my life, I wasn't lonely. I was simply free. And I think somewhere, deep inside, I had always known that real love never demands you disappear to keep it. Real love sees you, not for what you offer, but for who you are. That night, before I went to bed, I walked to the dresser and opened the top drawer. Inside, neatly folded, was the navy dress. The one Henry loved. The one I wore on the last Christmas I was ever seen. I held it to my chest. Not to wear. Not to change anything. Just to remember who I had been and who I had become. Outside, the wind softened. Inside, so did I.